You're listening to the podcast for all of the news, notes, and breakdowns for your Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Sons of the Shoe with Nick Wilson and Spencer German.
Hey guys, Nick Wilson, Spencer German with you. We are Sons of the Shoe, and we are getting ready to react live in real time to Ohio State's 35-7 win over Iowa today in Columbus. As always, guys, please follow Sons of the Shoe wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, what have you. Have I mentioned Apple? Follow Sons of the Shoe, and of course, you guys can subscribe to 92.3 The Fans YouTube channel. Watch us there, like our videos, comment on our videos. But today, let's get down to business there, Spence. Ohio State, for about half a game, it looked like it could be the dreaded T word, a trap game. And then pretty much right out of the gate in the third quarter, the game went from 7-0 to about 28-0 to 35-0. Finally, a late touchdown by Caleb Johnson, Iowa's fantastic back, made it 35-7. Ohio State remains undefeated. And shortly after this podcast, we'll be on the Oregon game.
Yeah, it's funny. I think when we talked about when we talked about the betting lines on this game and what the spread was, and we kind of made our picks for the week, I kind of laid out that I thought this was how the game could kind of go. I thought it was going to be Ohio State. It was going to take some time for them to sort of figure out Iowa's defense and get things kind of going. And then once they did figure it out, it was smooth sailing from there the rest of the way in the second quarter, and they proved that they were obviously the better team today. But it's funny because like that first drive, if you had told me that was going to be with the first drive, because I do think, Nick, like I thought that was the best drive this offense has had all season. Just frankly, like it was methodical. The run game was working. You were staying ahead of the sticks. Will Howard made some big boy throws, including the touchdown throw to finish that drive off. And it felt like things were really rolling. And I was like, okay. And if you had told me that's how the first drive was going to go, I would have thought they won by even more, because I wouldn't have thought they only put up 7 points in the first half. But yeah, kind of conversely to the last couple of weeks where the defense got off to slower starts, it was the offense that I think it got off to a slower start today. But as we saw in the second half, like their talent and then once they stopped shooting themselves in the foot, really is what it was. They were clearly the better team, that they improved it.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I thought both the offense and defense had a lot of things that they probably want to take back in the first half. Ohio State's defense on first and second down to start the game was really, really good. And then Cade McNamara started the game. This went into the early second quarter. He was 3 of 4 passing on third down. So characteristically bad on third downs, Ohio State's defense. And really, though, that's where they struggled. Ohio State's offense, man, it was just, there was a 4th and 1 call early that Will Howard got stuffed on. Then there was this fumble, that, this turnover, that turnover. And it was just a comedy of errors for Ohio State. And then, obviously, as you said, once they got into the second half, they got the ball first, marched right down the field, got that touchdown. And then from there, it became Iowa making all the mistakes. Cade McNamara had an interception today, but it was just a cadre of mistakes by Iowa. And at some point, after that first turnover in the second half by Iowa, that's when the floodgates open. And it was just open season for Ohio State's defense, because Cade McNamara, Iowa's only choice was to try and throw their way back into the game, and Cade McNamara simply isn't good enough to do that. And so Ohio State's defense just teed off on him, and it was mistake city from there. And really, it was 21 points in the third quarter there. And
yeah,
I honestly, once Ohio State went up 14-0, it felt like the game was over, and really just Ohio State kind of dropped the big leg time and time again after that.
Yeah, I think you sort of outlined it perfectly, like how things kind of played out. I'm going to be honest, and I know we'll get into our like it, love it, leave it later on. But I thought the defense showed some fortitude today, and really I don't know. Maybe the words impressed me. Like it did feel like they impressed me in a way, given how the last couple of weeks had gone. It was good to see them dominate in a way where even though their offense and that's the way I felt like that's how I felt like it was going, because the offense was struggling in the first half, but they continue to just keep Iowa off the scoreboard. And I think that was like the most encouraging thing. On top of the fact that they're creating turnovers, I was really impressed with the way that they stopped the run today. You knew that was going to be an issue with Caleb Johnson being as good as he is. And I thought the linebackers stepped up today. I thought that the defensive line stepped up today, both in the run and the pass. And like you said, like the first half really came down to just self-inflicted wounds. There was the Jeremiah Smith fumble, which, kind of it happens, whatever. It's not the end of the world. But I honestly felt like that was the moment that really sucked the momentum out of the first half, because they were marching down the field, and it was the two things you mentioned. It was the fourth down play where I forget who it was, but Iowa just blew the offensive line back and got into the backfield, and somebody was grabbing Will Howard's jersey almost immediately, and like that moment sort of swayed momentum back in Iowa's favor, and then the fumble. And then at the end, at the end of the half, it just felt like Will Howard, the one mistake he made with the interception, was just trying to like force it, which is not something that you want to see.
Yeah, and he actually had a pass, I want to say on that first drive, that was a characteristic so it wasn't double coverage. And I'm trying to remember the receiver. The receiver was covered, but the other safety was the other cornerback was close because there was a second wide receiver in the zone.
Yeah.
And then Will kind of threw it far, and honestly, he's lucky that didn't get intercepted too. Outside of that, what's surprising about this is if you look at the run totals, you would think that Ohio State just out Iowa. No, I mean, in the second half, and specifically in that third quarter, it was huge plays in the passing game that really broke this game from this is a bit okay, it's still kind of close, to there was no way in hell Iowa was gonna cover. And I gotta say, so for me, it wasn't just a tale of two halves for Ohio State, the offense and the defense. It was a tale of two halves with Will Howard, because I actually thought early. Yeah. I thought Ohio State played too much into the hand of Kirk Ferentz in Iowa. I mean, if you look at it, the first quarter was two Iowa drives. It was really the first Iowa drive, then a 9 or 10 minute drive by Ohio State, and then that second drive for Iowa bled into the second quarter. So it was wild to see. And again, they clearly were putting points up. They had opportunities before the fumble, which was, before that was a huge, I think, 21-yard rush by Quinshon Judkins. So it was an interesting game, but it's funny because of the way I think when I was thinking about halftime, there really wasn't any panic for me at all, because I just kept thinking it's 7-0, but you get the ball back. And I think what the first half really proved is Iowa just has no business putting Cade McNamara out there. And this continues. Listen, I know that this is not turn into bash Kirk Ferentz. He already had to fire his son. But can you imagine where Iowa would be if they could ever identify quarterbacks? Because that team, I mean, they hung in there pretty damn well.
Yeah.
And they played a pretty physical game. And I think they even induced some of those mistakes by Will Howard in the offense in the first half. So, yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those things where you can see the huge gap between Ohio State and Iowa, but there's no bigger gap than just Iowa and most good teams in the Big Ten because of the quarterback play. No offense to Cade McNamara. Seems like a nice young man, 24.
No, I think that's well said. And I kind of looked at it the opposite in a way. I get what you're saying. But I did think, to me, the ability of the defense to limit Iowa, and I get it's Iowa and all the jokes that are out there. Iowa's offense stinks. They can't score, yada, yada, yada. But it was refreshing to see, after the defense played poorly the last 2 weeks in the first half specifically, for them to play a half where, yeah, they made some mistakes, but they kept Iowa off the scoreboard. They continued to keep Iowa off the scoreboard. I thought they made some big plays in the run game, in the pass game, and that was really encouraging to see. You talked about Will Howard. I want to know from you, knowing what's waiting next week in Oregon, where are you at with Will Howard? Like, are you at a stage where you feel like you need to see more? Are you at a stage where you're comfortable and you feel like he's passed a lot of the tests or cleared a lot of the hurdles that we've kind of set from him? Or is there a little bit of nervousness about where he is? Because I had the take a couple weeks ago that was very controversial in saying that I didn't necessarily think he played a great Will Howard game, or it wasn't like his best game. And I actually I forget who actually, no, it was Corey with a K on Twitter. He actually tweeted me tonight and said, "So I'm willing to revisit our convo about Howard if he doesn't tone down the reckless passing crap." And I think that was after the interception before the half there. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, every time I think he takes a step where I'm like, okay, like that first drive, I was like, okay, I feel better. He made some really good throws. The touchdown was a really good throw. And then I felt like the interception was like a step backwards, where I'm like, I'm still a little bit nervous about this game next week because I don't fully know what we're going to get from Will Howard yet.
I mean, we're talking about 2 bad passes. Like, it was the first throw that I told you in the interception. Yeah. Find me another bad pass in the rest of that game. You can. I mean, they're always on the money. So I can understand that Will Howard is still the unproven guy. And I do think that what the first half of this Iowa game was him adjusting to a different level of competition.
Yeah.
And so I'm willing to say that. That being said, he didn't fumble the damn ball by Jeremiah Smith. If you look at that play being made.
Yeah.
And so I thought he adjusted. To me, the tail of this game with Will is I just thought he really kind of settled into that second half. And I think that's a kudos to him. So I don't really have any real problems with Will going forward, because the reality is I don't know there's anybody on the same level as Ohio State in the Big Ten. Maybe they're a half step off if you want to say that about Oregon, or maybe Michigan's a full step off. I'm just sorry, man. Like, Iowa played really sound football. And the second that Iowa State, even with Will Howard's oopsie at the end of the first half there, the second Ohio State said, I'm done fucking around here, and decided to open that thing up, it was night and day. And now I know there are other teams that can score a little bit more in line with Ohio State, but I just got to be honest. Like, this ended up being the perfect tune-up game for the entire team. And I think the second half is a team that woke up and said, okay, yeah, let's go play our football instead of just trying to play Big Ten football. And they kicked the holy crap out of, and I'll say this again, a really good Iowa team. Like, that is, if you watch that team and you're like, yeah, this is okay, maybe they shouldn't have gone for the 53-yard field goal or the 51-yard field goal early in the game, or maybe they should have done this, but like, overall, that Iowa team is just replete with good football players. So no, I have no I don't want to say no concerns left, but I'm incredibly happy with where Will Howard is. And I think the Oregon game's really the first opportunity to prove he belongs. And quite frankly, they've got so much freaking talent around this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know how much it matters, because Jeremiah Smith, dude, who, it's ridiculous we haven't seen his name to this point. Another one-handed touchdown catch.
Absurd.
Like just some of the playmaking that he does. And again, that on the Jeremiah Smith touchdown, go back and watch the 100 touchdown. The Iowa player covers 90% of Jeremiah Smith. The problem is the dude just went up and went yoink from the head.
He's ridiculous.
It's just the dumbest. Like, it's just watching him. One, watching him is so much fun. But two, like on the broadcast, they were talking about how Jeremiah said he wants to go ahead and break all of Chris Carter's freshman records. And then I think it was Geno Smith, who was his cousin, was quoted as saying that he's going to be the best wide receiver Ohio State has ever had. I know it is 5 games, right? Yeah, 5 games. Dude, if this is what he is as an 18-year-old freshman, I think the biggest problem you're going to have with Jeremiah Smith is keeping him, because someone at some point in the portal is going to throw $10 million because he is just like, we're 5 games in and I don't have any proper superlatives. And today was just another another episode of the Jeremiah Smith Show.
I have my own thoughts on Jeremiah Smith, which are similar thoughts that I think everybody has, which I'll get to in a second. What I will say on the Will Howard front
are the thoughts holy shit?
Basically. But to go back real quick to the Will Howard and the offense thing, because I mean, obviously, you know me at this point, Nick. You make fun of me on this very show for this. I'm the nervous Nelly of the group, where I just I get a little bit worried. I pucker up a little bit when I see Will Howard throw some bad passes, and those are the things that stand out to me. But I do agree with you. Like he put together a solid game, and this was, and this is the point I want to make, like at large here in regards to the offense. This was the first real test this team has had. I know we talked about Michigan State being somewhat of that because it was a Big Ten game and you're on the road at night, all these different things. But this was the first test you really had. It's an Iowa team that they were borderline a ranked team. They have a really good defense, really good run game, and you knew they were going to give you a dogfight because they always do. And so what I do like about Will Howard and the offense here is the fact that in a game where it wasn't coming easy at first, there was no panic. They just kind of kept doing things. They kept finding ways to be effective, and they were able to move the ball up and down the field, especially in the second half, and pull away when it mattered most. So this was a challenge. This was a test for them. And on that front, they did clear it. And so that's the thing that does give me hope moving forward, because to your point, like they have so much talent around Will that it might not even matter if he, throws in one interception a game, because they'll be able to be okay. Now, in regards to Jeremiah Smith, like, again, I think I titled one of these post-game shows, like, are there any adjectives left to describe Jeremiah Smith? And I don't know that there are at this point, but just 3 one-handed catches in the span of 2 weeks. Like, I don't know how to put in context, like, how good this player is. He is remarkable. He is something of mythology that you create in a lab, or that you create in like your road to glory player on College Football 25. Like, this is not a real football player that anybody, like, this is a dreamed up player, and he's putting up these numbers and just doing absurd things every single week. And maybe that is the difference. Like, maybe that is the thing that puts Ohio State in a place where Will Howard can be a little more loosey goosey at times, because hey, it's almost like when the Bengals were contemplating drafting an offensive lineman in Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase several years ago, and the talk going into the draft was, okay, well, do you draft a lineman to help protect Burrow, or do you draft Jamar Chase because, well, hell, Jamar Chase is down there somewhere, he can throw it up to him? And that's basically what it kind of feels like here. Is like anytime you throw it up to Jeremiah Smith, double coverage, single coverage, it feels like he's going to come down with it. This kid is fantastic, and he'll have no problem breezing past Chris Carter's freshman numbers.
By the way, because we have a few people on this in our mentions here on our live comments, and it should be noted that that Vanderbilt has pulled off the upset of Alabama 40-35 in what I think we can qualify as the biggest win in Vanderbilt football history. I'm sure there's like 4 more in like 100 years of football that matter. I heard the stat they said on the broadcast. They were 0-10 against the number 1 ranked team in the history of the program. So yeah, definitely a big deal for them, no doubt. Well, so one that could have implications on Ohio State moving up the rankings. I know it's early to think about that, but coming off the Georgia win, Alabama did leapfrog into the number 1 spot in college football. And here's the wild thing about that. We talked a lot about letdown games going into, or sorry, not letdown games, of trap games going into this Iowa game. Could Ohio State overcome that? In fairness, Ryan Day really hasn't had any obvious losses to bad teams. He's lost to really good teams, which at points is the frustration of Ohio State fans. Is some think he doesn't have enough good wins. I'll just be rough look having a letdown game for Kalen DeBoer after you proved to everyone that you were on the level with Georgia and arguably better than Georgia because you beat them, to turn around the next week and give a gigantic week to Vanderbilt. And let's just say this. If Clark Lee gets to 6 or 7 wins, the Vanderbilt coach, he gone. Like, this is the kind of win that college coaches get a lot more money to go somewhere else. I think he's got two win seasons out of his 3 full seasons in Vandy. They get bowl eligible. People are going to remember this. Clark Lee will be going somewhere, highly paid to do so as well. And Kalen DeBoer, the margin for error for Bama just got a little bit tighter because of this loss.
This was the classic like trap game after a big game, because those are trap games, I think, too, because there's such a high coming off of like a dramatic emotional win like we saw Alabama do last week, that you kind of you get lulled to sleep a little bit. You're like, oh, Vanderbilt's on the other side. It's like you're at the top of the mountain and then you go down the other side and you're like, oh, now I'm just at base camp. What's the big deal? There's nothing to see here. I was at the top of that thing. And yeah, like I'm sure Nick Saban, wherever he was watching the game, was beside himself, because he would have never let that Bama team fall asleep at the wheel like that. But what that loss tells me, though, Nick
Saban is smiling from ear to ear. Nick Saban's thinking, do you think they miss me yet?
You're never going to do it like me. They not like us. He's playing they not like us, and he's walking around his $1 million mansion.
He's actively feeding Kalen DeBoer kids like rat poison. Like, sure would hate if you ate this rat poison, gents.
I don't know if they I don't know if they picked that game on game day today, but I'm sure if they did, Nick Saban probably picked Bama. But it would have been funny if he actually had picked Vanderbilt. That would have been hilarious. No, but what this loss, as we were kind of getting started here and it was all kind of unfolding, Nick, tells me is that much like last year, I think this field is wide open again. And I mean, you remember, like, we had conversations about this last year. Felt like, because even though Michigan went on to win the national championship, there were points in the season we were like, well, are they that good? They have to run the ball 50 times to beat Penn State, and they can't really, like, and that was a tough one to win. And then, like, they're 1 or 2 plays away from losing to Ohio State, obviously, at the end of the year. And it was kind of like, it felt like, not that they were a paper tiger, but that they weren't just this national championship juggernaut team or anything like that. And so for them to go on to win the championship proved that otherwise. But I did feel like that playoff last year was wide open with Bama in there. We obviously loved Michael Penix and thought he was fantastic. Texas was really good. Like, the only teams right now that I feel like consensusly are like a step above everybody, at least based on what we've seen play out, are Texas, Tennessee, and Ohio State. But everybody else right now, and some of those teams, Texas and Tennessee both playing in the SEC, they might accumulate some losses here. Like, it's going to be interesting to see. But, like, yeah, this field feels wide open, which is another reason why that championship or bust mentality for Ohio State, it's suitable, and it's kind of where we're at, because if this is a field that they should be able to navigate and get through.
I would not go ahead and set Georgia off to the side. And honestly,
I think Georgia's good. I'm just saying, like, we saw Georgia the other night has some flaws, and like Carson Beck can get in his head a little bit, and he can make some mistakes. And now we saw tonight that Bama isn't flawless either. So that's my point, is more so like we're seeing some of there's more warts on some of these teams than there has been in previous years. I mean, think about it, Nick. Like, half the time with these Nick Saban Bama teams, it was like, well, who the hell's beating that? In 2020, when they matched up against Ohio State in the championship, it was like, okay, we felt really good about beating Clemson because we'd finally gotten over that monkey off their backs. And then you knew what was waiting on the other side. And it was like, yeah, this team is just it's a wagon. So I just think this year, I don't know that I see any teams that are like, that team's a wagon and nobody's even close to them.
All right, guys, if you're just joining us, it is time for Love It,
Like it, love it, leave it.
You son of a bitch. Like it, love it, and leave it. Please put your submissions there in the column there. I'm just going to go to, let's start with leave it. Whatever it was that implored Ohio State to try and play Iowa's game early in the game. I know Chip Kelly loves to establish the run. I think after that first drive, I would have liked to see it a little bit more giddy up. And in fairness, there weren't a lot of plays on offense in the first half in general. So I will say leave it, the Ohio State first half offense. How about you?
I'm going to leave Will Howard sort of lazily throwing that ball, but really I'm going to leave the fourth down play where Will Howard got tackled in the backfield, which was not his fault, but that was awful. I thought it was a bad play call, and I thought it was terrible blocking up front. And those are the types of situations that that the offensive line has to play better, which remains, I still think. Would you agree? Offensive line still maybe the most concerning thing moving forward?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, I feel like I need to have an intervention with you about Will Howard because I think
I've been so scarred by Kyle McCord. I don't trust anyone.
I think your Will Howard concern is surely your boredom. Let's be honest. I think if your concern about this offense is, well, Will Howard, he made 2 bad throws today. Give me any quarterback that makes 2 bad throws. If I can't think of a third quarterback, you are so money. It's not even funny, baby. And I really butchered that Swingers reference. But
it's okay.
Spencer,
you're probably right.
I'm saying this because I love you, because we're friends, because I care about you. Your obsession with overly critiquing Will Howard is going to bring about your downfall. And I can't be here to support you. Okay? And if that means I got to cut you off, I got to cut you off.
Is this like if Ohio State wins the national championship, I'm not allowed to show up at the parade because I shat on Will Howard too many times?
You can show up, but you have to sit outside. So like you have to stay like 50 feet from it, and then we just get like sad pictures of you like from like 50 feet away. All right, so that brings us to Like It. What did you like today, Spence?
Yeah, I made sure to put this put this down pretty early in the game as on my notes. I thought Sonny Styles played really well today from the linebacker group, and as an extension of that, I just kind of said the linebacker group as a whole. I thought, and part of it is you know what Iowa wants to do. They're going to run the football, and rightfully so. When you have Caleb Johnson on your side, he's phenomenal. He's going to be playing on Sundays one day. But I felt like the linebackers did a really good job today, filling those gaps, making tackles on him, not letting him break too many big ones. He had the 28-yarder, I think, was his long for the day in the second half. And other than that, he was pretty much bottled up. He was coming into this game, I think, with 4 straight 100-yard games, and they held him to 86 rushing yards. So I just thought that group as a whole that I had been sort of critical of in previous weeks, not being able to sort of fly to the ball and make plays, I thought they really played a good game today. So I was glad to see that from the linebacker group.
I'm going to go with a defensive lineman for Ohio State named Ty. Both Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton made a lot of really great plays today. That doesn't necessarily show up in the box score. I don't think they were credited with a sack, and I think combined they had, I say like 5 or 6 tackles, but multiple batted balls. You could see they were getting great pressure. They're collapsing pressure up the middle, which allowed the edges to get after and blitzers to get after quarterback and snuff the run. Even I thought Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams were fantastic today. So that is my like, and so that means it's time for our love. And I'm going to say passing the test. I love that they passed the test. This was a game that if you take Iowa light in any way, they're gonna steal one from you. And that first half was the great wake-up call. And then in the second half, they remembered that they were Ohio State, that they can beat anybody and they can out-talent anyone in this conference. So I loved that this was the tune-up game before Oregon, and I love to see Ohio State pass the test.
I like that answer. I think the obvious answer that a lot of people would throw out there is obviously another one-handed catch by Jeremiah Smith, which was phenomenal. But so I'm actually
basically just have to keep that there as like a placeholder.
It's just a placeholder, yeah. Well, it's kind of
it's an honorary.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of like in the NBA, like you could give LeBron first. There was a stretch of time where you could give LeBron the MVP like every year, but they got tired of giving him the MVP, so they just kind of conceded like, yeah, he's the best player. We're going to give the MVP to the next best player. So it's kind of like that. Like we know Jeremiah Smith's just going to do incredible things, so he's always going to be a loved candidate, but we're going to go to the next thing. I'm actually going to say, though, opposite of Jeremiah Smith, I thought the fact that Emeka Egbuka had 9 catches, 71 yards, and he had the three touchdowns today. Like, to me, that showed that, yes, Jeremiah Smith is a freak, and he's going to be that way at Ohio State, hopefully for a long, long period of time. But I thought it showed that, like, Emeka is still a force to be reckoned with. He's still a guy that can take over a game. He can still be that safety net for Will Howard. And so it kind of shows you just how like this offense isn't just like one guy in the passing game. Like, no, they have another guy that you gotta account for. And if one guy's struggling, and I don't even know if we can say Jeremiah Smith where he struggled because he rebounded after the fumble, but I just thought it was good to see that Emeka kind of became that safety net for Will, and that conversely from all the awe-inspiring plays that we get from Jeremiah Smith, it was a good Emeka day, and I like that about this offense.
So a great win by Ohio State, 35-7 at home. Next week, we are on to Oregon, and of course we'll have our mid.
Well, I was just going to say, I want people to know for next week's show that we are bringing back Alec Dietz, who is a reporter for the Register Guard USA Today in Eugene. With a chance, we're going to talk to him about the matchup, which he was on obviously before the season started, to kind of preview this thing. And we're excited to now have him on leading up to the game itself and see where he's at and where Oregon's at.
Thank you for the deets there.
I see what you did there, Nick.
So our midweek show will be with Oregon's Alec Dietz. We'll also get into our own Oregon preview, and we'll have 4 Down Territory as well, covering the biggest stories in college football. Please make sure to follow this podcast wherever you get your podcast: Apple, Spotify, 92.3 The Fan, Odyssey, the free Odyssey app, as it were. Please subscribe on 92.3 The Fan's YouTube channel. Like and comment on our videos. We love to interact with you guys. Follow me on TikTok. That's at Nick Wilson Says on TikTok. And again, follow Sons of the Shoe wherever you get your podcasts. Buckeyes 5-0, looking to go 6-0. We're damn near halfway there, Spence. Great stuff, buddy. Great stuff to all the commenters, and especially Brian, who busted Spencer's balls for wearing a Cleveland hat. We like when Spencer's balls get busted. It's a weird way to end a podcast, but we are out. Go Bucks, Spence.
Is it officially Oregon week? Can we say that?
No.
Not till tomorrow?
Monday.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sunday doesn't count? Okay.
No. Sunday's a day of rest. And the Browns
and
may
football.
be winning or
More
not.
football.
Yeah.
Well, then on to Oregon. Go Bucks.
Oregon. Go Bucks.